Thank you. I'll start and call the meeting to order. It's 9:30 in the morning. I'm going to start before we get into the agenda. So we have a few staff introductions here. Where we want to start with Mr. Roach.
Good morning, Council, and good morning, fellow administration folks. My pleasure to introduce to everybody Tegan Hill. Tegan is our new permanent full-time ECDEV admin assistant. She's been with us just a little bit over 3 weeks now, and she is doing a fabulous job, and we are really excited to be your ECDEV team.
Thank you. Nice to meet you all.
No, you too, and it was great meeting you at the trade fair there. She's definitely got a lot of ideas coming out of here, so we'll see where it leads. I'll go around the table here because I know there's some councillors you probably haven't met. Bert, or not Bert, Bruce.
Bruce Preston, Blue Ridge, Division 5.
John Burrows, Whitecourt West.
Dave Cush, it's Almo and the Reeve.
We've met Peter Kilkin, I'm with Goose Lake Freeman River.
Alan Dean, Whitecourt Central.
And then online we have Councillor Williams, if you can hear us there, Devin. No response from him, but thank you very much and nice to see you on the team.
Sorry, I could hear you. I couldn't get my mic unmuted.
No worries, Devin. He's the councillor for Fort Assiniboine. And Mrs. Anderson?
Come on, Tina. Good morning, Region Council. I'd like to introduce Tina Pradanik. She's our new Parks and Recreation Coordinator. Thank you for your support. She started yesterday, so she's just a fresh new penny. She brings with her a wealth of knowledge of community connections, community relationship building, strategic thinking, and all around awesome gal. She actually has so much plans. We were just chatting yesterday. You guys, we're gonna blow your minds. Just saying, we're gonna blow your minds. Welcome, Tina.
Morning, Tina, and I know we're definitely all familiar with you and the work that you do in the community, so it's great to have you on board here.
I'm excited.
Yeah, bravo.
Hey, with that, moving on then, are there any additions from administration on the agenda? Any additions from council? Councillor Kukin?
I'll move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Councillor. Call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
Let's move. 3.1, adoption of the agenda. Oh, sorry, you just did that. Additions, adoption. Adoption of the minutes, May 7th, 2025, meeting minutes. Anything anybody sees there? Any additions, omissions? Councillor Burrows?
I'll move the minutes as presented for the May 25th correction. May 7th.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's moved.
In favor.
Thank you, Devin. Bylaws and policy 7.1, amendment to financial reserve policy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item is coming back as a request at the last council meeting. There was a motion to amend our current financial reserve policy and establish a new reserve. We've called it the corporate risk reserve. The specific point of that is there are potential issues that provide a risk to the municipality where we may need to be authorized to provide funds to either defend them or to settle. And so based on some discussions with Mr. World, we're of the opinion that a $300,000 reserve would be appropriate. And it would give the CAO the authority per occurrence to spend up to $75,000 from this reserve on the condition that I notify council within 30 days of the issue. A lot of the things that would be eligible for this reserve are covered by insurance. For let's say a legal settlement, for example, typically our deductible is $25,000. But if there was a situation where we needed to go to a larger number, this would give that authority based on some of the discussions. I believe it's where we wanted it to be, but we're open to discussions or feedback on it.
Okay, Councillor, any discussion on this? Councillor Dean?
Seeing no discussion, I'm prepared to make a motion. I just, based on previous conversation, I think this makes a lot of sense. So I could move that council amend financial reserve policy F.5.202 by establishing the corporate risk reserve as a specific purpose reserve, adding it to Schedule A and Schedule B, and revising the financial reserve policy as presented to authorize the chief administrative officer to utilize up to $75,000 per occurrence from the corporate risk reserve, with notification to council required within 30 days of any such expenditure.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion with the motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
That's moved. And the second one, Councillor Coogan.
I move that the council direct administration to transfer $300,000 from the general operating reserve and transfer it to corporate risk reserve effective May 30th of 2025.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on that motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question again. All in favor?
In favor.
That's moved. 7.2, policy G1004, external boards and committees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is here because at a previous meeting, council had updated the committee's bylaw, which is the official bylaw that are woodlands regulated committees. What that does do, though, is leaves a regulatory gray area when it comes to all the committees and boards that council members are a part of that we don't manage or control. So we've worked in collaboration with a couple other municipalities to see what they were doing for best practices to organize it, but also be transparent, because as an organization we value that and want it to be clear of what associations you are taking part in as a representative of Woodlands County. This policy establishes those formally. We can't adopt them by bylaw simply because they aren't our committees or our groups. So this removes that gray area. It says these are our non-county associations or boards, and it also outlines how a new one can be established by council. So just giving it a little bit more structure, but also making it clear to the public that these are all the other commitments that you have as elected officials and that we're taking governance seriously.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Any discussion on this? Just looks more like a housekeeping item. Councillor Prestige.
I'll make a motion that council adopt policy G1.004, external boards and committees.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion of the motion?
Yeah, just one question, I guess, to the motion. In the event that council saw, through the chair that's directed to administration, in the event that council saw an opportunity to add another board, like, for example, the Athabasca Watershed Council was just recently added, would this have to be revised?
Yes,
Yeah.
that would be through the chair, that would be my recommendation, is we'd bring it back as an amendment to add whatever.
Gotcha.
And for the record, Athabasca is in there. It's
Yeah,
just-
right, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion to the motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
That's moved. 7.3, policy 6306, demonstrations.
Good morning, Your Worship and members of council. This RFD is before you for policy 6306 demonstration. The intent of this policy has already been replaced by Farming Forward and Gateway Research Organization, which these two organizations are already receiving funding to carry out the same functions as the original intent of the policy. Therefore, this policy 6306 is no longer necessary for our county. Therefore, administration took this matter to Agricultural Service Board at their May 6, 2025 meeting, and the board recommended council to rescind the policy, and therefore we're here to present the policy to council for it to be rescinded. Thank you.
Yeah, and just so councilors who weren't part of that discussion, this original policy was from 1994, and a lot of what was in it has been reduplicated with newer policies and revised policies, and it's just updated. Councillor Rose.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I will make the motion that council rescind policy 6306, demonstrations.
Counselor. Any discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
That's moved. 7.4, Bylaw 624-01/25, amending committees of council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As discussed at the last council meeting, there was a desire to establish a new committee of council, a CAO Performance Review Committee. Based on that, there is an amendment brought forward which would establish the new committee. It establishes the terms and the scope of work and the authority of that committee when it comes to keeping me in line and ensuring that I'm performing to the level that you want. And as such, we're asking for 3 readings, and as well, I believe the informal direction was to appoint specific counselors. If I misheard, then you're more than welcome to appoint whoever you want, but that was my understanding based on our discussions.
Thank you. Any discussion? See, Counselor Prestige?
Make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw 624-01/25, amending committees of council bylaw.
Thank you. Counselor, discussion to that motion? Not seeing any. Call the question. All in favor? It's passed.
In favor.
Counselor Burrows?
I'll make a motion that council give second reading to bylaw 624-01/25, amending committees of council bylaw.
Thank you, Counselor. Call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
And that's moved. Counselor Coogan?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that council give unanimous consent to proceed to the third and final reading of bylaw 624-01/25, amending committees of council bylaw.
Thank you, Counselor. I'll call the question again. All in favor?
In favor.
And we have unanimous. We can go to third reading. Counselor Dean?
Move that council give third reading to bylaw 624-01/25, amending committees of council bylaw.
Thank you, Counselor. Call the question again. All in favor?
In favor.
Again, it's moved, and we have one final motion at the end there, so it's a long one. Counselor Dean?
Move that council appoint Councillor Williams, Wilhelm, and Burrows to the CAO Performance Review Committee with the term expiring in conjunction with the 2025 organizational meeting.
Thank you, Counselor. Discussion to that motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
Thank you, Devin, and that one's passed. 7.5, Bylaw 628/25, Tax Penalty Bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is being brought before you because prior to me coming here last year, council updated this bylaw with the intent of removing the specific date in relation to the penalties. Somehow or another, the bylaw that was before you maintained the date function. And so there was no technical penalties established for 2025. We have reviewed, verified, and amended this bylaw to properly reflect that housekeeping error from prior to me being here. And it also provides a clarity issue that I won't go into too much detail, but it defines the penalties of past bylaws as well within it, just in case anyone was to question validity of past penalties.
Any questions on this? Counselor Dean?
Not a question, but just a comment through to admin. Good catch. You hope that there isn't a need for penalties, but if you don't have a mechanism, then you can't collect.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussion? Counselor Prestige?
Make a motion that council give first reading to bylaw 628/25, tax penalty bylaw.
Thank you, Counselor. Call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
Let's move. Second motion. Counselor Burrows.
I'll make a motion that council give second re-4-rating, but reading to bylaw 628/25, tax penalty bylaw.
Thank you, Counselor. Just didn't catch that when we were going through there. We'll just make sure that gets amended when we do the minutes.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Motion on the floor. Call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
That's moved. Third reading. Councillor Coogan.
I make a motion that council give unanimous consent to proceed to third and final reading of bylaw 628-25 tax penalty bylaw.
Thank you, Councillor. Again, we'll call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
That's moved. Final, Councillor Dean.
Move the council give third reading to bylaw 628/25 tax penalty bylaw.
Thank you very much. With that, again, I'll call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
And that bylaw is passed. New business 8.1, letter of support, FireSmart coordinator grant. Morning, Sheldon. How are you this morning?
Oh, I'm great. Yourself?
Not so bad.
Morning, Council. So for today, there's an RFD in front of you. It's in regards to a letter of support for the FireSmart coordinator grant. Currently, there is a grant out there through FRIA, the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta, for a FireSmart coordinator position. The town of Whitecourt is preparing to submit a grant application for a regional community FireSmart coordinator. This role will focus on communities within Whitecourt Forest area, which includes Woodlands County, Swan Hills, and Whitecourt. This will build local awareness and resilience. The coordinator will organize and participate in community events, such as wildfire community preparedness days, school presentations, trade fairs, educational awareness for residents on wildfire risks and mitigation strategies. This position here plays a critical leadership role in reducing wildfire risks, fostering interagency cooperation, and advancing a long-term sustainability of wildfire preparedness in the region. Supporting this grant application for a regional community FireSmart coordinator position will greatly benefit Woodlands County and surrounding municipalities within Woodlands Whitecourt Forest Protection Area. Representatives from Swan Hills, Alberta Wildfire, are in favor of submitting this grant application for grant funded position. Thank you.
Any discussion there? Just my question, we got in-kind costs will be associated towards this project. What are we considering as in-kind costs?
To the chair, there would be in-kind costs in regards to myself or Jennifer Lanning attending meetings with the town and Swan Hills during business hours.
Okay. Any other discussion on this? Councillor Dean?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I'd be prepared to move the council direct administration to forward a letter of support to the town of Whitecourt for the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta FireSmart Coordinator Grant application.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wilhelm, sorry, I seen your, Mr. Williams, seen your hand up there. Do you have a?
I just did have one question. I'm sorry, I was trying to catch it before the motion was made, but would this cover home assessments like going forward or just until the grant runs out? The only reason I ask that is there's a lot of people around our areas that are asking for FireSmart home assessments and things like that done, and the feedback that they're getting from the county is that we don't currently provide that. So I think they're fairly important. We've seen a lot of communities burnt lately, and if we can help, or if community members can protect their own homes, that saves a lot on our responders and forestry prepping that in the emergency. So I just this is a good time to bring it up and see if we can maybe look at doing that maybe continuously, not just with this grant, I guess.
To the chair, to Councillor Williams, the question to your answer is yes, this position would currently take that role on to help with home FireSmart assessments. We do have trained, qualified individuals within the county that took the training. They can go out and do it on volunteer time. They're not paid to do it. So it's, if they're not working at their job that pays them and they have time to go and do these assessments, they currently can go and do these assessments on a volunteer basis. Moving forward, this would be a discussion around the table with the other parties to see how this looks moving forward.
Thank you. Now, any discussion on the motion? Councillor Dean?
Yeah, to discussion on my own motion. What I hear Councillor Williams speaking to is not necessarily directly related to this, right? But I think he brings up a really good point. And I think it's a discussion that we should have at the council table to see what that looks like, providing those types of services, and whether there could be a user fee attached, but just having a look at that whole idea.
To the chair, Councillor Dean. I agree on that. A home assessment typically takes about 4 hours in total for one assessment, depending on how large the land is and the property is and the house is and all. There's a lot of factors that play into it. There's the whole thing of going to the home and then coming back to where your computer is doing the report and then getting that report signed off by Alberta FireSmart and then going back and meeting with the resident again. So there's a lot of time spent, which is fine. It's just it's a bigger picture, right? There needs to be more resources in the end.
100%.
Okay, and motion on the floor here. Any discussion to the motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question on the letter of support. All in favor?
In favor.
And that passes. Thank you very much, Sheldon.
Thank you.
8.2, 2025 Subdivision Roads Reconstruction Funding Increase for McMillan Road, West County Hills Road, Township Road 591B, Campsite Road, Westridge Road, and Gibson Road. Good morning, Mr. Zhang.
Good morning, Your Worship and members of council. I want to first acknowledge Mr. Paul for his effort in developing the RFD and looking after this project. Myself and Paul will jointly present this RFD. As you can see, it's a little bit longer than the usual ones. So please go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, good morning, Your Worship and members of council, and thanks, Jeff. So to start with, and for understanding, back in 2024, administration hired McMillan to assess the performance and condition of the of all the county cold mix roads, consisting of about 6 to 7 kilometers. This was done to develop and recommend a strategy for rehabilitation and maintenance of these roads. We know that they are deteriorating. So from that, we've identified priority subdivision roads to tackle for this year. You'll see in the RFD the various rehab options that the report came up with, including with the associated cost and lifespan associated with those repair options. So just to briefly outline, option 2A that you see here is to pulverize and rejuvenate the existing surface and apply fog coat. Fog coat is simply, premium dust control. It doesn't provide a hard wearing surface. Option 2B is similar to 2A, but with added aggregate to provide additional strength to the base layer. Option 3A is to pulverize and rejuvenate the existing surface with a chip seal wearing surface, so it's a harder wearing surface. Option 3B is to pulverize and rejuvenate the existing surface, but with additional aggregate to strengthen the base. Now, this report was a network level type assessment and only and utilized a GPR data, which is a ground penetrating radar. It was used to scan the existing roads and determine a rough picture of what's underneath, and utilize qualitative data using visual inspections. So this was used, to gain an understanding of the current state of the roads and provide us with something to start with to formulate the long-term capital planning tool. And back in 2024 as well, when we were facing deteriorating road conditions, we brought forward to our to council an RFD to recommending cold in place recycling for the Westridge and Gibsons subdivision roads. So council approved that plan. However, we were not able to collect any bids for the work, and so we had to change strategy to pulverize the existing cold mix with the injection of a chemical binder and finish off with a seal coat surface in 2025. So based on that, with the 2025 formulation of the budget, we used the McMillan report to formulate the capital long-term budgeting. Now, understanding our priority subdivision roads, we hired Aegis, our engineering consultant, to commence on the design of the subdivision roads, and Aegis completed the pavement design utilizing borehole data. So what Aegis did was they they drilled borehole samples on the subdivision roads that we identified as priorities, and completed a pavement design based on the data.
Councilor Dean?
Sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted some clarity on the boreholes. So, first of all, how deep?
So they bored to further deeper than the existing road. So
Like a meter?
up to the sub base. So
If you need to come back, that's fine. I would just, and then the other question, you talk about qualitative data. So when they're taking these, taking these core, my assumption is that they don't go to the best looking part of the road. They would go to an area that looks like it's weak and have a look there.
So they did a representative sampling of the roads. So they chose the middle portion, the middle lane, at representative points throughout the length of the road.
Throughout the length?
Yeah.
Okay, so say on a 500-meter road, how many core samples might there have been?
So there would have been, we can get back to you on the more specific points, but at least.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, each individual subdivision roads it drilled 3 holes. So McMillan was shorter than others, they still drilled 3 holes, and Township 591B was over a kilometer, they drilled 3 holes also. They were spread out across the length of the road. They are probably not exactly at the beginning, 1/3, 2/3, and the end. Based on the data that we have seen, that the locations, they are 150 to 500 meters apart. So there's probably a bit of site judgment by the drilling company. I also don't think they purposely picked the worst location, because the roads are pretty consistent in condition when you look at them. The only road that I think that they may have chosen the worst location would be campsite, which was partially powerized. There's no point drilling through a previously powerized gravel section. They would try to drill that through still the combing section. So
Okay.
hopefully that answers your question. We'll come back with the depth of the borehole data.
Thank you.
Continuing on, so when we hired Aegis, they bore boreholes and found out and confirmed what we already know, that most of these roads did not have good base, but also most of these roads where they had base, they had they were intermixed with weaker materials, making the road base a lot more weaker than anticipated. And so based on that information, our engineering consultant came up with the pavement design and called for the addition of more base layer. And
Just sorry to interrupt. Just one point to further point to make is not necessarily just the lack of sufficient base layers. There's also inconsistency that we found. For example, Township Road 591B, where council can see the borehole data summary, the base layer, the thickness of base layer is between 0 to 150. That means the road itself was not consistent in how much base it has. So that's another layer of complexity that we were facing. So,
all right, thank you. So with that, and with the initial iteration of the pavement design, we came up with various options to rebuild the road, basically, with a different lifespan on each options. So, excuse me. Option 1A as you turn to the RFD, I'm just gonna go through the what the different options mean. So option 1A refers to pulverizing the base and adding appropriate amount of new base to the subdivision roads this year, and preparing the surface of Gibsons and Westridge, which already the first half of the construction of those roads were completed last year, and then finishing the surface of all the roads with a double aggregate seal coat layer. So this will provide a 20-year design life on the base layer of the 2025 subdivision roads, and a 10-year design life on the base layer of the 2024 subdivision roads, with a 10-year design life on the finished wearing surface layer. Now, the 2024 subdivision roads were given a conservative rating of 10 years. However, it is believed that, chemical-bound base with a waterproofing surface will surpass the 10-year design life as long as the appropriate maintenance works are completed to avoid a breach into the base layer and further weakening of the base. Option 1B refers to pulverizing the base and adding appropriate amount of new base to the subdivision roads this year, and preparing the surface of Gibsons and Westridge, and then finishing the surface of all the roads with a single aggregate seal coat layer. So similar to the option 1A, but this option will be providing just a 5-year design life on the finished wearing surface. However, the expectation is that the second layer of aggregate, the subdivision roads will require a second layer of aggregate seal coat to achieve a total design life of 10 years. Option 1C refers to doing the works outlined in option 1A, but with the addition of additional base to Gibsons and Westridge, and a double aggregate seal coat finish layer, providing a design life of 10-year surface and 20 years on the base. And option 1D refers to the works outlined in option 1C, but with a single aggregate seal coat layer. So all it does is reducing the initial upfront cost. We also looked at options 2A and 2B, which are similar to options 1A and 1D, with a difference on the design life of the base layer on the 4 subdivision roads new this year reduced to 10 years. This is to match the design life on the current base layer on Gibsons and Westridge. And option 3 refers to a hot mix asphalt wearing layer on all the 6 subdivision roads, which also entails providing a 20-year design life on the base, which means adding more base to Westridge and Gibsons, in addition to what was already completed. Then option 4, which is not showing here, is to manage the 2025 program with the current budget of $627,000. If this option is desirable, it is proposed that Westridge and Gibsons will be surfaced with a single layer seal coat, and McMillan and campsite roads be worked on using option 1B. And this advice is focused on finishing the 2024 wearing surface, 2024 work, and preferring the projects that best utilize the remaining budget. It should also be noted that all 4 proposed new subdivision reconstructions are on roads with poor condition. An alternate to this is to use the funding to finish off Westridge and Gibson with the double layer seal coat. And so the work is finished for these 2 subdivisions. Now I turn it to Jeff.
Recognizing the initial capital cost that we presented for all the different options, we also calculate all the life cycle costs, try to stretch out to 20 years so we have a fair comparison. So the last column is the annualized cost, is basically divide the column that's called total 20-year life cycle cost by 20. Try to present in a way that we can easily compare the initial capital costing and annual on the based on the annualized cost basis. We have considered a number of ways to try to reduce the cost. I can appreciate that the numbers of options 1A all the way through option 3, they all exceed the existing budget for the initial capital cost. So we have looked into a number of options to try to reduce costs. I was asked due to this year potentially favorable pricing for hot mix asphalt, what would the hot mix price be? And that's why we developed option 3, try to answer that question. It turned out that hot mix asphalt is actually more expensive, obviously on the initial capital cost, but also on the annualized cost basis. We have looked into we have developed the options based on the lay of the top layer of the double layer seal coat, try to reduce the initial capital cost load. We have considered using county staff to perform some of the work ourselves, try to reduce the cost, and regardless of options chosen, we estimate there's probably $50,000 in save just by using our own staff to perform tasks that otherwise we'll have to use a contractor for. We have asked the consultant to consider one of the options that McMillan's report recommended, which was the Powerize and Rejuvenate, which in other words, in the industry also known as asphalt stabilized base course. It's also, there's also a similar method to that. It's called coat replacing recycling. These strategies are very similar to each other. So we did ask Aegis to look into why asphalt stabilized base course was not an option they considered. And they came back and said, due to the inconsistent layer of base material in the existing roads through the coring, that's what's making the process of asphalt stabilized base course very high risk in terms of they just can't predict and what they're going to find when they open up the road. That's why that option was not considered any further. So moving through the rationale for us to come up with a recommendation, we consider option 2A and 2B, which are the options providing a 10-year base to be undesirable in the sense that if we are going to spend the money and prioritize our limited funding, my advice is try to prioritize on the base, regardless of how much money you spend on the surface, whether you want a premium product on the surface, you still need to have a stable base. If you don't spend money where it matters the most, then we're wasting the investment away. That's why we, in our recommendation, in our thinking for the recommendation, we treat option 2A and 2B as less desirable, just because of the base. Moving on, the seal coat surface is on a stable base. It's generally the most cost-efficient method to provide a stable and hard surface road. That's because the low traffic volume of our county subdivision roads, we really don't see the benefit of having hot mix or cold mix just for providing a hard surface road. A seal coat surface, a double layer seal coat surface will provide the same value at a lower cost. And that's why we're preferring option 1A through 1D, but is, moving a little bit further to talk about those options, 1A and 1B is more preferred over 1C and 1D because they have a lower initial capital cost. We have some confidence that the work we did at Gibsons and Westridge, as you heard from Paul, even though we put a conservative 10-year design life on the work that we completed last year, we do have some confidence that once we put a cap on top, the base itself is going to last more than 10 years, just because there's protection on the top. I have included in the RFD, I was asked a few times how does a seal coat work. I did include a video in the video linking in the RFD, so if you're interested, you can click and watch how that process works. If we're focused on 1A and 1B, we thought 1B would be the more preferred option just because of the initial capital cost. And applying the second layer of the double layer seal coat 5 years later, we're not having any sunk cost. We don't have to go back, you just freshly apply another layer. So we thought that probably 1B would be the more preferred option, just because trying to reduce the initial capital cost load.
Sorry, Jeff. Councillor Dean?
Through the chair to administration, I hear what you're saying, the rationale makes sense to me too. The only difference between 1A and 1B basically was the extra seal coat, right?
through the chair to Councillor Dean, yes, the difference is the delaying the top layer of the double layer seal coat to a later year.
So my question though, it talks about 4 subdivisions, 1A and 1B, GBC for 4 subdivisions, and we have 6 listed.
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, if you go back to the explanation of 1B is to add additional GBC, granular base course, that's the base material, for the 4 new subdivisions this year. For the 2 subdivisions last year, we're not adding any additional base material, we're just going to prepare the surface and then put a seal coat surface on.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
So continuing, should council wish to consider, say, option 4, trying to stay within the existing budget, that's, Paul has already talked about a few alternatives that council may consider. If option 4 is preferred, try to not use any reserve funding for this. And in order for us to get the work done, we need to be able to tender the project shortly to allow sufficient time to have construction start in July, August. We need to take the benefit of the hot summer months for seal coat to happen, and even the base work. We just, in Canada, we're limited to the benefit of 2 months in the summer to do any construction work. Moving further on, other thoughts beyond this project. Through the writing of the RFD, there's a few things we're going to do differently in the 2026 year. In 2025, we hired a consultant for the design after the budget was approved. That's why there's a reverse order presenting the cost increases. In future years, we would try to strive to have the design completed before December. So at the time of building the budget, we have the right number to present to council. And especially when we need design based on, we need the numbers to be based on design with coring. Have to rely on GPR data isn't necessarily it was the best information we had at the time, but it's probably not the best information for building a realistic budget. So that's one thing we're going to do differently this year. And the other thoughts that we want to offer is further discussions at a later governance and priority committee meeting is probably advisable to just talk about the expectation on the level of service of subdivision roads, whether the focus is on just pure dust control or a hard surface road or a stable hard surface road, or there's a stable hard surface road with very limited road beds, i.e. hot mix. Those carry significant variations in the cost, in which direction we should be going. And in the RFD, I'm not going to waste council time to read through the few thoughts I presented there, but it's in the RFD for future discussions. And at a later taxation committee, after the discussion at the governance and priority committee, it's probably also advisable to talk about potential funding sources to make sure that we can we have either reserve funding or capital funding or some other means to support the choice of level service. So given what we have presented so far, if council wishes to proceed with option 1B, we'll be seeking a cost increase of $511,000 out of the road capital reserve. And the current balance in the reserve is sitting at $3 million. It's above the target 2.5 million. So withdrawing 511,000 will put us just under the target of 2.5. Option 1B, as what we have, I hope we have demonstrated through the rationale, we're trying to take a balance between investing in what makes the most sense and protecting a long-term investment, because the base, once you build up the base, it is a long-term investment. The base is not going anywhere. 20 years later, you may have to touch it up and rework a bit, but you're not going backwards, such as atomic asphalt. You have to build it off and rebuild. So in option 1B, we're really trying to take that balance between managing the cost increase and at the same time providing a long-term stable base with a hard driving surface. That's why, in summary, we're recommending 1B. Should council wish to consider any other options, we're certainly here to discuss and advise on the other options. Thank you for your patience. I know it's a longer RFD. I'm pleased to take any of your questions.
I just want to thank you guys and your team for presenting this and bringing this forward. I don't think anybody on council here is surprised that we have base issues in a lot of those issues or areas, and we keep reworking the top and have faults again in the same spots over and over. And the work that was put into this, you spent a lot of time detailing this, so thank you. Any questions, comments, Councillor Dean?
Yeah, it's more of a comment through the chair to administration. I guess as a council, our number one job is to make sure that the money is spent properly. And we've been asking for a plan that shows detail and shows rationale for a number of years now. And, when I recall this process first starting, we talked about the 67K of subdivision, dividing it by 10 and kind of tackling 7K a year. And I know one of the comments that came from councillors was, that's just going to be an ongoing cost. But what I hear you saying is that in a 10-year cycle, the bases, if they're properly reconstructed, aren't going to require this amount of attention. And so theoretically, you can see funding requirements going down over time. And this snapshot is part of a bigger picture. I would like to see the prioritized map so the residents have an idea of where they kind of are on the list. I know personally I represent about 800 people, and the majority of them live in subdivisions, and they've been asking this question for a long time. So thanks for the work.
Councillor Burrows?
Yeah, through the chair to, I guess, Jeff from administration. I'm really glad to see the word base included in a report for a change. We've got lots of reports, and we've hammered away on the fact that the road base has to be there. I've just got a couple of questions though. So the area on, what is it, Westridge and Gibson, they didn't get borehole. I don't see data here for the.
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, you are correct. The reason being that it was already powerized last year. There's no the benefit of doing boreholes is diminished once we already powerized the base.
So, I guess, so what's in there now? How do we know?
So through the chair to Councillor Burrows, last year we have powerized about 200 millimeters of 20 centimeters thick of base with the chemical addition. That's the information the design was based on is assuming that we have 20 centimeters thick of chemical stabilized base. And this year we're going to put a seal coat surface on.
Okay, and just a follow-up. So initially we were talking chip seal on those roads. Is chip seal and seal coat same interchangeable or no?
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, they are very similar in technique. They both require the spray of a thick asphalt oil first. The difference between a chip seal and a seal coat is the size of aggregate. Chip seal uses a single size aggregate, a larger stone, whereas seal coat uses a graded aggregate, which means you have aggregate of different sizes. So they interlock a bit better than than the larger stone chip seal. But they function very similar to each other. They have very similar lifespans. It's just a slight variation in the choice of material.
Okay, so between chip seal and seal coat, you say seal coat is the superior product?
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, they have different applications. Last year I used the word seal coat. It's because it's generally used on the highways. This year, in talking with the design consultant recommended seal coat. The reason for that recommendation is seal coat has less amount of free trips that are flying around.
Sorry, of which?
Fly trips, like loose trips that flies around. And we thought that was a benefit for our residents. And on the highways after a fresh chip seal job, you got a lot of windshield damage claims. That's one of the choice.
Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, I'd just like to say that this is something that we've been looking for, and the conversation I think we wanted to have for probably the duration of my time on council. What I really like about the process that you went through here is it gives me a better understanding of that you're looking at the future costs and exactly how you're going to mitigate some of the things that, patching or symptom management does. And for me, looking at this is that I think that I've always said long-term planning is the one that I'd like to see on the table, and you've brought that here. And I'd just like to say thank you for that. And that gives me a bit more confidence in looking at the dollar value for the residents. And I know this isn't in my area, but to me that doesn't matter. It matters what that plan is, and thank you for that.
Councillor Dean, then Councillor Prestige.
Sorry, I was just going to make a motion, but I'll wait.
Councillor Prestige.
Through the chair to administration, thank you for doing this. I've been trying to get this for 7.5 years. As you said, putting the surface on without fixing the base is wasting money. It's just, you might as well just burn your money. So if we can fix that and get it to stand, this is perfect. Thank you.
Councillor Burrows.
My brain just went blank. Oh, I know. How does so the amount of sub-base that we've got on this road and what we're looking at bringing the base layer up to, how does that compare to our new construction standards? Like what would be required of a new subdivision road if it was built today?
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, the 20-year design generally correlates with what we expect on a new construction road. Every road is different. You also have to look at the geotechnical condition underneath. But generally speaking, for new construction roads, you're expecting somewhere between 300 to 450 mils of granular base course. So by doing the work that we propose to do under 1B for McMillan, West Country Hills, Township of 591B, and campsite, we are generally returning to meeting our construction standard.
Okay. Just one other question. Boy, I don't know what's wrong with my head today, sorry. Are we gonna do compaction testing before putting the surface on?
Right. Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, we will be having our consultant Aegis to be on site when we do the preparation work. And it is the expectation that our consultant Aegis will be conducting some compaction testing in the sense of losing my words again, using a fully loaded water truck to test it after
Roll test.
Roll test. Thank you. Sorry.
I need a follow-up, are you good?
No, I think I'm good, so for compaction testing.
Counselor Dean?
Sure, just before I make the motion, I just would like to reiterate a comment I made earlier that if we could be provided with a color-coded map, I know there was one developed before that showed, the codes were like poor condition, fair condition, etc. That could be shared on the county website. Yeah, that exactly. Is that on the county website right now? No?
Through the chair to Councillor Dean, we should be able to develop something similar. This is outdated information
Okay.
too, so.
And maybe run it, do an RFD and just allow council to have a look before it goes out?
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, with that, I move the council approves funding increase of $515,000 to proceed with option B, with funding coming from the road capital reserve.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, I'm gonna call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
And that's moved. Thank you very much for the presentation. Brings us down to council reports and questions. I'm gonna start with Councillor Williams on mine there.
Okay, yeah, I attended a couple of meetings and then I had one that was conflicting, so I wasn't able to go to the, to one, but, my first one I attended was the Ag Society meeting in Fort Assiniboine. So they recently had not recently, a little while ago, received a matching grant. And they've done a whole bunch of flooring, so upstairs in the arenas, all new flooring, and the stairs, that was really long overdue. So that's just wrapping up now, and then they've done a bunch of lighting upgrades, and they're also working on, I believe they're putting a boiler in, not a hot water tank, or it's a new boiler system. The feedback on that building since it's been built was the first 2 guys in the shower get the hot water and the rest get ice cold showers. So that's been like that since it was built. So I think there'll be some pretty happy hockey teams in there. And then the hoedown, the planning is well underway for that. They're looking at getting there's a few that they can apply for, but some accessibility grants that they're trying for. They want to try and build an accessibility bleacher. So we have quite a few people that attend the hoedown in wheelchairs and different mobility issues that come there. So they're trying to get something, make that a little more user friendly, rather than trying to peek through the ring all the time. And then add some more seating as well, because the attendance was so high at the hoedown the last couple of years. There was standing room only, so that's good news. And then I attended a BARC meeting. They went over some community initiatives that they're looking into, and a few different community education sessions that they're still kind of in the works. They don't have anything set in stone yet, but working towards a few of those. And then they also said that if any neighboring communities have any important information to get out to public or anything, they want to streamline some of the information sharing across county lines, I guess. They have quite a following on that page, and they can get information out fairly quickly. So they just had mentioned that, so I said I'd bring it up here. But yeah, it was a pretty quick meeting, that one. But they do a lot of good work at BARC. So, and that was all I had.
Thank you. Any questions for Councillor Williams? No. Councillor Dean?
I was on a work project out at our lake lot. My wife had a really long to-do list, so I didn't attend any committee meetings. But I do have 3 items I'd like to bring up with council. One, I think Councillor Burrows has some experience with this, whereby the residents that live in subdivisions that keep their ditches fairly well mown and manicured. Over the winter months, they can end up with gravel that spills into their ditch. And I know administration was enlightened on a situation like that where there was considerable gravel. And Councilor Burrows, do you recall what the remediation was, what happened there? Do you remember a resident, you know?
I think there were some, I didn't have anything to do with that one myself personally, but if I recall, it was, you know, the mower damage from the rocks
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And I'm kind of torn in between the two things because it's Woodlands ditch, right? And I think in a lot of cases, we haven't done, like there's lots of areas in my neck of the woods where we have fences that are built, we have things that are, trees that are on the right. They've just done they've done a poor job over the years of maintaining that right of way. And then, you know, people take it for themselves, and I get that. So look, I'd love to have a larger conversation around this one, because I'm torn in the fact that we need that right of way for the 3-to-1. If you can't, and there are areas that we have 45-degree angle ditches where you can't mow them, you can't maintain them, you can't, you know, so you need a little more space in the right of way. So that this is a bigger issue than just that. But I'm certainly sensitive. I know I did have a resident that the blade, grater blade, scored out all the grass and, you know, made it a big mud hole kind of thing. And I get where that's frustrating. So I think it's going to have to be some kind of program that we deal with on a larger basis.
Sure.
But yeah, the gravel's getting thrown into the ditches. Like, we pay for that too, right? We want to keep as much of it on the road as we can.
Yeah, and I think to be fair to administration, you know, you go through the freeze-thaw cycle where all of a sudden it's pouring rain in January and, you know, you need the gravel. But at the same time, when residents in some subdivisions, there are no fences, and they just collectively mow all the ditches and take that expense away from the county as a whole. So I agree. I think, you know, we need to put this on maybe a G&P discussion to kind of have a look at how we can work with the residents to recognize that they're doing work, and when they encounter situations where literally there's you know, a half a load of gravel in a ditch that gets raked up and the piles there, you know, you can't move over that, right? So what happens to that stuff? Okay. The other thing I wanted to bring to council's attention is especially the folks that live in the Whitecourt area. Had a resident contact me the other day, and he had had some concrete removed from his property, and the contractor wanted to take it to the town shop, which is where the concrete is being accepted, and the contractor was turned away. So something's changed there. I'm not sure if they're running out of space, but we should probably find out what's happening there. And the last thing, and again, John, if you don't mind, I'd ask you to weigh in on this conversation that's happening with a gentleman who would like to sign a lease at the airport, but he's not comfortable with some of the terms and conditions, and how we can facilitate a conversation. I think council facilitate a conversation to better understand what those leases entail.
Yeah, that was my first look at a lease, the way it's written. I'd actually, under previous administration, had requested them, and I wasn't allowed to see them, which is strange. But I don't know. I see some. I certainly see some areas where the developer would be concerned with in the future goings on, if you know what I mean. And then once you've built, like, let's say you've got a lease going, and you run the building for 20 years, and you're done. You know, you're not going to fly anymore, so you're going to sell the building. Now you have to go through the lease process. The new property owner would have to go through a lease process with the county, and then the development, you know, is already there. So you gotta go through the sale process with the landowner. And then also we have the usage. So are these gonna be commercial used buildings, or are they gonna be privately owned? Or, what type of aircraft are gonna be in there? So if you're running smaller, lighter aircraft, you don't need the paving standards that we have in some of those newer areas. If you're running real private hangars, a lot of them don't have water and sewer. They're just, some of them are even just cold storage. Most have power. So you kind of have to design areas to the market that you're looking for, but we've never really looked at the private market, the private aircraft market. So,
Do you see value in sending this to a GMP so council understands it's better?
I think so. I mean, from my own experience at the airport, I know we've lost quite a few possible developments that could have occurred there. And the other thing, the thing that's important on the what goes where is when you have these paving standards and the size of the pavement and the weight handling of them, you would be, if you're spending $8 million to build it, and I think that's what that new section was, to build that, and you've got it to a design standard that's high, why would you lease that land to, eventually you're gonna reach capacity, so why would you lease the land to somebody that has nothing but small aircraft that can literally run on grass? And they wouldn't have a problem with it. You're not making good use of your value for dollar in areas that you spent at the airport. But yes, I would support pushing that to a GMP so that council could have a discussion on it.
Okay, and I know, looks like Councilor Coca wants to weigh in, but I will, when I conclude my report, I'm gonna make a notice of motion to send it to a GMP.
Councilor Cogan, you have a question for?
Yeah,
Councilor
through the chair to Alan. When I'm listening to this conversation, I see this being in some ways much similar to the conversation that we had around our roads 4 years ago. There has been no comprehensive planning of and ideas of how council feels that airport should look like and operate like. And in the past, it's been heavily weighed. The weight was by administration, and I think that sending that to GNP and actually getting a conversation about the direction of maybe developing that as an area structure plan, which has been in our land use bylaw conversations, I think that makes a lot of sense. So, I appreciate you putting that out as a question, because I think there has to be a long-term plan for the airport if we're going to continue to go down that road.
So, I mean, this is bigger than just leases. There's, so I'll take a stab at this notice of motion. I'd make a notice of motion to have administration develop an RFD to review airport leases and planning.
No discussion on a notice of motion, call the question, all in favor?
In favor.
And that's carried. Thank you. Anything else, Councilor Dean?
No, thanks.
Councilor Coogan?
Yeah, on the 13th of May, I attended the committee meeting for growth, where we're designing or proposing to roll out an education and a greater conversation around the emissions, energy, kind of clearing the air on why we as a municipality want to, or as a region, want to start to educate people on much similar what we did with the SMRs and how industry works in that interrelationship going forward. It was a really good meeting. We got some real solid direction in where we're going to take that to utilize the NRED grant that we received for that. And it is in alignment with, Bert was at that meeting as well, and it does align with the strategic plan for the county, so that's important. On the 14th of May, Bert invited me to sit down with the Prairie Scan rep, looking at some of the CEDD grant, and a proposal that we would kind of try to, as a growth board, forward some of the things that the region needs here that the municipality is doing, but, to add to that value. And it was determined that at this point in time, it wouldn't be a benefit for us to be involved in that. So I really appreciate Bert inviting me to that meeting to understand a little better what the federal granting process was. On the 15th, I attended the FCSS annual meeting, plus there was, I brought the folder or the thing out here. We've had some incredible uptake from the service that FCSS provides that the council approved, in Fort Assiniboine. I think there were 64 people who had taxes done there by the FCSS people, which was great. We have some 20 clients. So we now have a bus service that it has 4 zones within the county limits, and so there's regular trips available that they charge people $5 for round trip. There's also trips available for medical, and there's private bookings with the FCSS, and they're going to increase that program. So they feel actually probably within a year or so, we're going to see more than 1 day a week in Fort Assiniboine, probably be 2. So I think that this is a program that's being well served. I attended the Barra District Social Housing meeting on the 16th, where we are moving forward on the needs assessment, understanding we didn't have any land to expand, and Barhead District Social Housing is completely booked. And we have a waiting list. So there was some property that became available, so we put in a offer for the property, and it looks like we're going to get it. And that money was in our reserves. We don't know exactly what's going to happen there yet, because there's been no planning done for that. We just know that there's a lack of affordable housing, and so if you don't have property, you can't move on it. So that's what we did there, and that's pretty much was my last week.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions for Peter? Councillor Burrows?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been fielding lots of calls on roads and some drainage issues. I got one today that I've got to go and have a look at. So we're back and forth with administration on that one. And it's normal to see at this time of year. This is all projects that we didn't quite get done before the end of the snow flew, and so everybody's trying to make sure that we're back at it. I missed the trade fair. I wanted to be at that, but I went down to Calgary to attend a forum, and it was an interesting conversation, because it was really talking about the future of energy and where Alberta's part is in that economy and what it's going to look like for the province and municipalities. And I was surprised. I thought this might be a little fringy, but I ran into several other councillors from other municipalities there, and I was quite pleasantly surprised with the qualification of the speakers. And so I took away quite a bit from that, but it's, Alberta's really about energy. It continues to be a huge portion of Canada's economy. So, what is the last federal election going to look like for us, and how does it affect the municipalities? And it's more impactful than people may even think at the federal level when they keep putting regulations in place that they're designed around an environmental mindset that drastically affects the way Alberta can do business. So it was a very educational component. And then, yeah, busy with RMA things as well. And I'm prepping up to go to FCM at the end of the month. That's it for me.
Any questions, Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, John, that form that you went to, is there a possibility that if you have any of that information, because that is in alignment with some of the conversation we're going to have with this emissions conference, because it is part of the educational piece, and I think that that has to have a broader view than just us as council.
Yeah, I can talk offline with you.
Yep.
I don't, the way it was structured, there was no video recordings of anything or anything like that, but it was 700 people, so.
Yeah, we're looking for similar speakers who would speak to that.
Okay.
At this, so, yeah, thanks.
Anything else, Councillor Burrows? Councillor Prestidge?
Through the chair. It was kind of a light 2 weeks. We had our very last victim services meeting. All the banking is done. The society is shut down. There was $64,000 left for funds, and that has been donated to the Whitecourt Fire Department for mental health for the firefighters, which does include Woodlands Fire Departments. So it can be accessed through their fire department, which is good. And Peter and I went on a meal tour at Westridge's sawmill. Just amazing how automated this mill is. We were looking at a computer screen, and every board that goes through the mill is graded, and actual cost per board comes up on the screen. Couldn't believe it. And the other thing that's amazing is between short logs and full-length logs, they go through 41,000 pieces a day. So it's just mind-boggling. There's more wood flying around there than. And also, Hardeep, the general manager, put a standing invitation out to any of the rest of the council or administration that wants to go on a tour, just give them a call. And that's all I've done this.
Any Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, just to add to what Bruce said there, what amazed me was that there were no real physical board touching labor jobs there anymore. It is so automated. And one of the other things was that the optimization that they have there is second to none. It is one of what he said, 3 super mills in Alberta that have achieved that level of optimization. So it does 2 things. One is it obviously increases efficiency, but also they have an ability to access every log. They know already which market it's going to. It's just amazing, and they have an incredible pride in the workmanship. Bruce and I got to sit in on one of their maintenance meetings where they were laying out the maintenance for the next week. It was so professional and so well. They have every contractor that comes in there to do maintenance on that mill. They know already how many hours they're going to be there, what they're going to be doing, and it just blew me away how well that place was run.
Anything else, Councilor Prestige? Say anything? I'll get to my report. Start off Woodlands County Library Board. I sat in one of their meetings. They just recently finished updating their front counter, rebuilt that. The one that was in there was older and kind of falling apart and had a few safety concerns with. So the one that was built and put in is absolutely fantastic and looks great. The contractor did a fantastic job. They are currently, I think they have a couple of quotes there also. Some of their cabinets, they have a metal racking company they got them from is obsolete now. They went bankrupt out of Calgary. And they're finding that the sides of the shelving is all falling apart. Just MDF board is all pulling off as kids tug and pull on it. So they're getting estimates to redo the sides of those shelving in similar material to the counter that we just put in, so everything matches and looks good. So fantastic. It looks really good in there. Working on some of their summer programming now and getting that up and going. One thing, they did have an incident in the library. They kind of had to develop policies a little bit differently now. They didn't have a policy before, per se, between there and our Fort School in regards to the ages at which children are just being dropped and left off at the libraries unattended. And some of the residents sound like they're kind of utilizing the library as a secondary daycare and just dropping kids off, which has been causing some issues. So we had a discussion at the board and just kind of made it so that there's at least a minimum age at which kids should be left unattended. So it's not on the staff there to watch the kids and have to take care of them after school or between programming. They do what they can, but they are still limited on resources with the amount of people that are using them. Had a Whitecourt Library Board meeting, fairly short. They're kind of going through some of it's coming up for their director's review. So we were looking at some of the questions and kind of getting that form ready and looked at some of the summer programming that's coming up. It's again very busy library in summer for the community. Actually, and to that, with the Woodlands Library Board, part of the programming that they have through YRL, I know Whitecourt's utilized it in the past for bringing in snowshoes and other stuff like that. Woodlands, or Blue Ridge Library, they've been bringing in some kind of outdoor sports gear, like soccer balls and stuff like that they have where kids can check them out at the library and then utilize them in the parks and stuff around there. They said it's been very well received from the community, and it just kind of a bid to get more kids active and outside and kind of utilizing it and having kind of a centralized place where they can just kind of go and check them out and sign out the equipment. Managed to go to the trade fair with Councillor Wilhelm. First day there with Bert and Tegan. Was very well attended when we were there. Lots of people, lots of questions on, again, our census that's going out and kind of the need and the purpose in some of the questions, and again on the taxation forms and kind of how the breakdown was. There was a lot of residents were very happy to see, kind of a more detailed list on how our taxes are spent, and had a few really good conversations with that. And then lastly, I had a community futures meeting here last week. A couple local businesses got some loans approved where they're looking at expanding their businesses and kind of growth. So it's good to see for the area that we have some development and some new things coming. And that's one more thing I have. And again, I did have a conversation with Jeff on in regards to graveling one road in my area there. Is it possible, even if you can send an email to council, I don't know if we need a full discussion at a GP, but just something around our graveling program and how we determine or how we do it or how the rotation is. I know my area, typically when I have concerns with people, it's that they haven't seen gravel in 5-10 years in some of the roads, and it's out. I'm just would like, for myself anyways, I'm sure other councils are probably the same way with some of the roads, kind of a better understanding on how that program works or how we kind of develop or where we go to put the gravel. And that's all that I have. If there's any questions, or Councilor Dean?
Yeah, question with respect to Community Futures. Executive Director was here talking about the NRED program that they had applied for, and they wanted to hire that coordinator. Was there any update on the progress of that?
I didn't see an update on that progress. When I dropped out of the meeting a little bit early, I had some personal things to attend to, so that might have come down later in the agenda. But when the portion of the meeting I was there, we were going through a lot of grant applications and approving them for some of the locals.
Sure. Okay.
And that could have been part of it. I dropped out just before the round table, and that could have been the round table. But I think I sent the meeting minutes out to everybody.
Yeah, I read them and I didn't see anything in there.
Anything else? Not seeing anybody. Get a motion to move councillor reports. Councillor Coogan.
Make a motion that we receive the councilor's reports as information.
Thank you, councillor. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's moved.
In favor.
Thank you, councillor Williams. Councillor correspondence. Any items there anybody needs to discuss, or councillor Dean?
Move the council receive the council correspondence for information.
Thank you, councillor. Call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
And that's moved. Only got a couple items through, might as well just get through. 11C.1, Whitecourt Administration Building Sewer Improvement.
Good morning, Your Worship and members of council. Subsequent to the previous council meeting on May 7th, we received a request from council for, I want to understand the sewer improvement needs for this building. Mr. Robert Kerr, the manager of environmental services, has prepared a proposal for the sewer improvement for this building. So please go ahead.
I apologize for not having the sheet printed off. I tried 3 times this morning because my computer did not want to commute with this office today. So it's basically we've set it up. I've sent you an RFP for $64,000 out of the capital reserve, general capital reserve. The lower part of this building has been flooded out a few times in the past few years due to the improper mechanism working in our sewer tank out here. The building was built with a certain capacity for the people that were here, and we've since then grown. We've added another addition. We've grown more. When we put the shop up, pardon me, when we put the shop up, we made the line go up to the shop tank so we can address sewage to the town. One of the issues with that is it has frozen off a couple of times, and it has actually affected both buildings. So in order to fix that problem, or to try and alleviate it as much as we can, we propose to have this system go into the town directly, into the town line that we have going across here, and adding another tank as well for the capacity that is needed for the building and the more offices that we're adding to it. I did send a map as to how we were looking at doing it with the additional tank. How do I put that? Sorry, I'm not a public speaker. So with the sewer line and tank installed, there would also be a curb stop, a backflow preventer just outside the parking lot here to try and alleviate anything coming back from the tank. That would help with anything coming back. There would also be a new grinder pump installed into the new tank. I don't like using old pumps for new systems, or old with new doesn't generally work well. So we were thinking of doing that with a total of about $64,000. I've contacted the town. There is no additional permits needed to tie in, as it is on our property, and it is essentially it's our line from the town that goes through. So they've said that we don't need any additional permits for that. Any questions?
Hey, Councillor Dean and Councillor Coogan.
Yeah, through the chair, to Robert, so if I've got this right, we're gonna discharge into this tank and then pump into the town's main line?
Through Chairperson to Councilor Dean, yes.
Okay.
That is the concern for myself and for a few people is the water sitting in here or the sewage sitting in here cools off. Then we pump it across through the 2 parking lots to the other tank, cools that off even more. Last year or 2 years ago, the pump actually froze because of how cold it was.
Sure.
One of the remediations we had done for that was dug down 3 feet at both locations on the barrels, insulated them, insulated the lid to try and keep the warmth of the sewage from escaping.
Right.
So yeah, it would be just going into a second tank and then off to the town versus going across 2 parking lots.
Yeah, makes sense. Thanks.
Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, this is, if I see the option is that you want, recommended option is to go ahead with that and get it done.
Yes.
And I understand that because, you know, we were gonna spend a whole pile of money again on thawing and stuff out, so this is an unbudgeted expense, and option 2 is, it's to refer it to 26 budget. Being that we've seen this a couple of times, I think option 1 would be, in my view, the best step. So the question is do we have the capacity to get that done this year?
And through the capital reserve, balance is at 2.5 million currently. And so I believe that 64,000 would be a good expenditure out of there.
I think he's asking, manpower-wise, do we have is this a project that we can feasibly get done?
I have a contractor, sorry. I do have a contractor that is willing to do it. He had given us a quote last fall, or late summer, and then it was tabled at that time, and then reintroduced once we were looking at the offices being built here to try and alleviate any other damage.
Any other questions? Councillor Rose?
This might be one for administration. I should have asked this last time, but, and I don't know whether it was covered by insurance, but what was the bill on the remediation for the building? And the reason that I ask this is because if I get questioned on why we're doing this year instead of next year or something, I think that the risk of something like this happening again, certainly with the investment in new offices and stuff, the cost of doing it is minimal compared to the risk to what could happen if we don't. So, does anyone know the rough numbers for damages and the remediation that occurred? And I think it flooded here twice, and the shop once or twice?
Twice in the shop and twice here.
Through the chair to Councillor Burrows, I do not have the information on the 2 floodings here. We can find out from finance how much the repair costs versus how much we recover from insurance. For the 2 floodings over at the shop, the first one, I do not have information. The second one, the overall repair bill was over 6 figures because insurance covered majority of it. We only paid $5,000 of deductible. But I can go talk to finance for the 2 floodings here in this building. And
I think the 6-figure bill will cover it. I won't make you go any further. Thank you, though. That's perfect.
Anything else from council? Councillor Coogan?
Yeah, with that, I'll make the motion that we approve utilizing $64,000 out of general capital reserve for the Whitecourt admin building sewer improvement project.
Thank you, Councillor. Discussion to the motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
It's moved. And 11C.2, Whitecourt admin building office development lower level.
Good morning, Your Worship and members of council. Once again, I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Paul for his effort in managing this project and developing multiple different options, trying to presenting this RFD. We have discussed at May 7th council meeting of this RFD. At that council meeting, we were asked to provide floor plans as well as the topic on sewer backup prevention. So, council already heard that the sewer backup prevention, in the attachment to this RFD, council will find floor plans. So, without going repeat the previous RFD, I'm just going to talk about some additions to the RFD. We're currently reached our capacity for accommodating any additional positions. We don't have any rooms left in this building for any approved positions in 2025 and 2026. That's why we urgently need the development of the empty space of the wing over there. And we have reached out, or I have reached out to our grant application consultant to see if there's any funding available for the development of offices, the development of washrooms, as well as HVAC. The answer is no for any of those. So we 100% of fundings, whichever option the council wish to approve, have to come from general capital reserve. Council heard from Rob, the current balance is sitting at 2.5 minus 64 that council already approved for the previous project. So that's the funding where any options would come out of. So in addition to the two options the council already seen last time, so namely number one is based on 7 office plus 1 meeting room, where the 1 meeting room can be covered into 2 separate offices. That's option 1 with the washrooms. Option 2 will be the 7 plus 1 meeting room converted into two offices, but without the washroom. We have double checked with building code inspector. The washroom based on the occupancy level is optional. So that's why we thought we present the council with option 2, where don't develop the washroom just yet and try to reduce the load on withdrawal from the surplus. Reserve. Option 3 is the previous option 2 in the previous RFD, is essentially try to reduce the expenditure as much as we can by converting offices into cubicles. Though there's probably a concern from a noise level that we need to manage, as well as morale, that people generally, staff generally prefer offices than cubicles. Without going through all the word for word in the RFD, that's my presentation. Thank you.
Just one question I have in regards to the washrooms, given that they're going to be down at the end of this hallway, essentially, is where the building, or the expansion, the offices or cubicles, whichever way we go, is. Do we I know it says it's not required, but given there's washrooms right here in this hallway that aren't utilized all the time, is it feasible for administration just to come through those doors at the end of the hallway and come over here?
So,
instead of adding the additional $30,000 for the bathroom upgrade?
To the chair, that's definitely feasible. That's why we proposed option 2 as.
Yeah, I was just checking, making sure. Councillor Dean has his hand up first.
Yeah, that's good. You covered it.
Councillor Dean?
Yeah, just through the chair to Jeff, I know the discussion was around cubicle and offices, and I've had a few conversations with staff in other facility, in other places, and that, when we were talking about this office, and the cubicle option to me is a bit, I found that most of them were saying it's you're going to change it eventually anyway because of the problems that cubicles have. So is this cubicle or is this office?
Through the chair to Councillor Cook, option 2 is offices, option 3 is cubicle.
And for the $10,000 difference
Exactly.
for staff morale, and you probably get a little bit better workflow, giving that better flow through the office, more privacy, quieter.
Yep.
I know we lose two spots essentially for workers, but I think we could probably work around that if need be. Mr. Zhang?
To the chair, we lose one office because in In option 3 for the cubicle option, if you look at the drawing, because people will be sitting in cubicles, we have to designate one cubicle converted into 2 individual booth type of workstation for people to take phone calls and meetings. So the difference between option 2 and option 3 is $10,000 difference in cost and one workstation.
Thank you for the clarification. Councilor Dean?
Sorry, I did have a follow-up question about the washroom. If washrooms were included, would that take away some of the square footage available for the office design, or would that be added to it?
Through the chair to Councilor Dean, the washroom is outside of the office space. It's in a different part of the building.
Okay.
Councilor Burrows and Councilor Preston.
So if the washrooms are outside of that design, we don't have to, that's an area we could actually add later if we wanted to, or if we had to, without interrupting everything in the office area. Is that correct?
Through the chair to Councilor Burrows, that's correct. The washrooms is essentially a optional scope at this time. We can choose to develop that in X number of years later.
Councilor Preston?
Through the chair to administration, I agree with the offices and the cubicles. I worked in a cubicle and just did not like it. It's noisy, you have no privacy when you're on the phone. Yeah, and I have a concern why we need a meeting room there. We have one right next door here, we have one upstairs. Why do we need a third meeting room?
Through the chair to Councilor Prestige, the floor plan for the offices, the 7 offices and 1 meeting room, is just try to suggest that if because currently the amount of meeting room we have, we're pretty much tapped out. We sometimes have to walk around and try to find meeting rooms, or have meeting room in CAO's office if we can't find meeting rooms. That's why the idea, when we put together the option 1 and 2 for offices, is to have 7 offices and 1 meeting room. We also recognize that in the future there may be a time that we need additional offices. That's why we want to make the design flexible. If we need to convert that 1 meeting room into 2 offices, we can do so. I mean, that's not, whether we have 1 meeting room or 2 offices, that's not really set on stone. If we want to forego the meeting room on opening day and just go with 2 offices, we can make that change. It's not a difficult change for that.
So,
Councilor Burrows?
just to clarify what you're saying about the meeting room, is the meeting room is really for the whole building, would be utilized by the whole building, and maybe the CAO's office is too big? I don't know.
Through the chair to Councilor Burrows, the intent is, yes, the meeting room is for anyone in the office to book.
Yeah, okay.
Any other discussion? Anybody want to make a motion? Councilor Dean?
Yeah, let me just find it, sorry. I'm a little unclear as to what 1x1 means, but I'll move the council approves funding increase of, is that 111,000 to the Whitecourt admin building office development lower level project with funding coming from capital reserve. Do you need option 2 included in the motion? Okay.
Councilor, discussion on the motion? Not seeing any, I'll call the question. All in favor?
In favor.
That's moved, and that takes us down to number 13. Motion to adjourn. Councilor Dean?
Motion to adjourn.
Councilor, call the question. All in favor? We're adjourned at
In favor.
13.